Good morning, this is Eitan Shalom, and I'm going to talk to you now about some cooling herbal drinks that you can make in summer to cool your body naturally through the medicinal qualities of the herbs themselves. This way you can have a cool summer drink that cools you down without damaging your gut the way iced beverages do. Why do iced beverages in excess, an iced beverage here or there with an ice cube or two in it is very different than the way we drink iced beverages in the USA, which, by the way, is pretty much the only country where we drink iced beverages like this, although the culture has spread a little bit to Asia. An iced beverage that's freezing cold is like putting an ice pack on the lining of your stomach. And what does ice do? Why do we put an ice pack on a bruise or a strain? To inhibit the flow of blood to the area. Well, when you inhibit the flow of blood to the lining of the stomach, you're doing the exact opposite of what we need for healthy digestion. Everything that promotes good digestion involves increasing the flow of blood to the lining of your stomach. From eating in a relaxed manner, in a beautiful place, with beautiful smelling food, all of which stimulates the digestive fire, which increases the flow of blood. When we say stimulate digestive fire, or Agni in Ayurveda, what we're actually talking about is the increased flow of blood to the lining of the stomach, which then causes an increase of hydrochloric acid secretions, an increase of mucus from the glands that line the stomach, so that will protect the lining of the stomach from the hydrochloric acid. The role of the hydrochloric acid is to digest the food, not to burn holes in your stomach. So this is a twofold mechanism: increase of secretions of mucus that lines the stomach and protects it from the increased hydrochloric acid that's there to break the food down. The process of digestion is a process of transformation of raw material, liquids and solids, into 101-degree soup. Which is, if anybody who's ever vomited knows what that 101-degree soup looks like. Well, what you see when you vomit, I'm sorry, this is kind of disgusting to talk about when I'm about to tell you about these beverages, but I just want to explain for the doubting Thomases why Ayurveda and Chinese medicine are very much against iced beverages in excess and cold food in excess. Because what you see when you vomit, then when that then passes into the small intestine, that's when it gets hit with all the enzymes from the pancreas and the bile from the gallbladder, and that breaks it down even further. And then it's that essence, what Chinese medicine calls essence, that essence of the Honghua process, the transformation and transportation of nutrients. That essence then gets transported through the portal vein to the liver, where the nutrients then enter the bloodstream after being, so to say, filtered by the liver for toxins. And that's why when you consume toxins like alcohol in excess, they damage your liver. So now, a little bit of physiology. Now let's just talk about the herbs that I have here. By the way, if you hear music playing in the background, this is my favorite jazz singer. Her name is Rita Payés. She's Catalan, from Catalonia, between Spain and France. And then that's her mother, Elizabeth Roma. Her mother's a wonderful guitarist. And Rita is a vocalist who also is a wonderful trombone player. And this is an album that made together of Brazilian and Spanish songs. That's just absolutely marvelous. And a couple of jazz songs. Highly recommend it. Title of the album is Imagina. That's the title song on the album. All right, so let's talk about cooling herbs. These are just a few of the cooling herbs you can make. So what do we have here? Here we have Indian Sarsparilla. Indian Sarsparilla is an interesting herb. It's the chief ingredient in a famous Indian beverage that they drink in the summer called Sarbat. It's a South Indian beverage, Sarbat, which is made with Indian Sarsparilla, licorice root, sweetened with raw Indian sugar called jaggery, which can be made from either the from the toddy palm or from the just cane sugar. It's basically a kind of a brown sugar with a very strong smell. I'm not a big fan of jaggery myself, so I sweeten it with stevia and raw coconut sugar. And then the final ingredient is lime juice. And I've written about this on my blog, how lime juice is considered cooling in Ayurveda. I love this spoon, and from my grandmother. Lime juice is considered cooling, and lemon juice is considered actually a little bit warming. So you'll find in South Asia and Southeast Asia, pretty exclusively, they use lime juice. Now, it also so happens that I don't think they have lemons, the kind of lemons we have here. So anyway, I like lime. I like the flavor of lime, and it does feel viscerally cooling compared to lemon. Okay, so that's sarsaparilla. Sarsaparilla has it's an acquired taste. It's a very vanilla kind of fragrance. And Indian sarsaparilla is different from Jamaican sarsaparilla. I don't know the botany, if they're related plants or not, but this is Indian sarsaparilla. Second is hibiscus. This is called Jamaicha in Spanish. It's extremely popular in Mexico. It's one of the 3 or 4 drinks. Well, what do you see in taco shops in California? And also when I've traveled in Mexico in the kind of luncheon restaurants, you generally see hibiscus drink, horchata, which is a rice vanilla drink, and lemonade. So hibiscus, called Jamaica in Spanish, is also one of the cooling beverages, and sorry, also one of the cooling beverages. It gives a beautiful dark red color, and just be alert to the fact that it's on the sour side. So you don't need a lot. A little bit goes a long way. And if you were a Pitta type with any kind of gut disorder involving fire or heat, such as gastritis or GERD, I would not drink very much of the Jamaica because of the sour flavor. Now, I'm saying that based on the fact that I once, when I was in Mexico, was drinking a lot of it, and it irritated my stomach. And I don't normally have stomach issues, but I have in the past, under periods of high stress, had a little bit of acidity in my stomach. Like a stomach ache from acidity, where you can really feel like it was what you ate, and it was the Jamaica. So that's my personal experience with it, and I do remember when I first had it, I noticed how sour it was, and I actually didn't even like it at first. I will, let me show you the next one and then I'll explain. This is roasted or toasted corn that the Koreans use in one of their cooling summer drinks, which they make with toasted barley, which I don't have to show you right now. But that's a fabulous cooling drink, toasted barley with a little bit of this toasted corn. But I find that a little bit of the toasted corn goes really well with the Jamaica. And corn corn is actually technically a fruit. It's not a grain. But anyway, corn in Chinese medicine is considered cooling. And anybody that's ever picked a corn off of a corn cob straight off of a corn cob plant in the middle of summer and bitten into it, because you can eat it raw, it's delicious. It's very sweet, it's full of moisture, and it definitely feels very cooling. It feels cold. When you bite into it, it actually feels cold. So I add some of that to my hibiscus, and then that makes it even more cooling. Finally, burdock root. Burdock root is a vegetable that is used a lot in Indian cuisine as a vegetable, not when it's dried, when it's fresh. I don't have any to show you right now, but you can get it at the Chinese market, fresh, and Chinese or Japanese, and also at some of the health food stores. And it's an excellent vegetable that's prepared in a lot of different ways in Japanese cuisine, one of which is with carrot. Sorry, my throat's a little, with carrot, in a method called kimpira. But this burdock root is dried. And burdock root is interesting. It's very cooling. In Chinese medicine, the fruit of the burdock plant is used to cool fevers, and it's used for different kinds of hot type skin disorders. I use burdock root as a kitchen medicine in large quantities when I have a patient with eczema or acne, both of which, or hives, all three of which are hot type skin disorders, in order to cool their system down without damaging the gut, because a lot of the herbs we use can be a little bit harsh. I have them drink, and also just to supplement, because when you take a medicine, it's one thing, but when you take, because when you take a medicine, your digestive fire isn't fired up. But when you drink a beverage or eat a food that's delicious, your digestive fire is fired up. That's why in Chinese medicine, we often, when we can, have people take herbs with food if it's appropriate. Because when you're, or rather I should say, in Chinese culture, they often will cook herbs in with food, whether it's with a rice congee, or whether it is cooked in a soup with flesh. Usually those are what we call tonic herbs, but sometimes they're cooling herbs as well. Actually, they're not infrequently cooling herbs. I take that back. It's just that nobody does it here. So, but yeah, there's a lot of times where cooling herbs are cooked with, like honeysuckle, for example. So now, burdock root. Burdock root is very mild. It's very bland. So when you make burdock root tea or soup, it's a very plain taste. It's very slightly sweet, and it's just very easy to drink because it doesn't have any kind of unpleasant taste. It's also not especially delicious. But in the hot, what I find though, is in the hot weather, because it's slightly sweet, it's very easy to drink and it's very nice. And I will sometimes combine it with other things that I have around, and none of which I can think of right at this second. I sometimes might put a little lime in it. Okay, so those are the herbs I wanted to show you about, but I want to add something. Now, this is a tea that unfortunately is no longer available, Pita Tea, but I want to show you the herbs that are in here. The herbs that are in here, and so Pita Tea is for cooling pitta, which means it's for cooling fire, which means it's a summer tea. It's a summer tea, but it's also a tea that anybody can drink year-round if they have an excess of fire. Now, an excess of fire can mean both mental fire and physical fire. And think about it. First of all the metaphors for that we use. Somebody's hot-tempered. Don't get so hot around the collar. That person's a hothead. All of those refer to an excess of anger and aggression and lack of control of anger and aggression. It doesn't refer to sadness. It doesn't refer to fear. It refers to one thing and one thing only, fire. And in fact, since I specialize in the treatment of skin disorders, it's also true that people with acne often have higher testosterone levels. That's why when you see I'm just going to say that and not get into that further. So, but testosterone, what does an excess of testosterone do? It makes you aggressive, right? We have a term here in America, testosterone head, which refers to somebody who's kind of got a lot of muscles and not so much brains. When men take steroids, and testosterone and steroids are in the same family, when men take steroids, or women, for weightlifting and all that kind of thing, what does it do? It gives them acne. Okay, now, so the point I was making about that is that when we talk about pathological fire, we're talking about pathological heat, and you can have pathological physical heat without any kind of pathological mental heat. You could have eczema, you could have hives, but you can also have pathological mental heat. And we notice that in summer is the time of year where people get irritable. The hot weather makes you irritable. Nobody gets irritable in the winter when it's cold out and snowing. If anything, you get lethargic. But in summer, the heat creates a lot. It just creates irritability. People are not in the mood for things. They don't have patience. People get into fights in cities. It's really common. So that's the effect of heat on our mental body, just as it affects our physical body. And this is an important point because in Ayurveda and Chinese medicine, we do not differentiate between the mind and the body. And for God's sakes, why should we? I mean, the idea of the mind, that's just a concept. Actually, I would argue that there's no such thing as mind. Your mind is your brain. And your brain is new. I mean, if I want to be like a hardcore scientist, your mind is found in the brain and in the body, because your mind is a function of your nervous system and your brain, which means it's a function of neurotransmitters. And, if you could destroy someone's memory by if you could destroy the part of the brain that involves memory without killing a person, they wouldn't have a memory anymore. So let's not get too far into that, but just a point to say that it's really dumb to think of the mind and the body as different or separate. And the concept of mind and body being separate was created by Descartes, the French mathematician, scientist, philosopher, in the whatever period he lived in, I don't know if you call that the late Middle Ages or early modern period. So when we cool the body, we cool the mind. When we warm the body, we warm the mind. Because when someone's really cold and weak, and I experienced this when I was younger in acupuncture school, and I was very skinny. I had been a vegetarian for a long time. I tended to be very cold. I was very weak, and I had a low back problem. I had a really bad low back problem. I had a herniated disc, and I took Chinese herbs, which are called yang tonics, to warm my lower back and to strengthen my lower back, and they also made me feel stronger emotionally. Because when you feel sick, you don't feel well. And when you feel well, you tend to feel better emotionally. It's a no-brainer. And it's why exercise is so good. You're feeling a little depressed, you go for a walk, you feel better. Okay, now, so cooling the mind and body in summer. And why I'm getting on this whole kick about the mind is because when we look at the herbs in this tea, there we go, cardamom, cinnamon, holy basil, licorice, and sandalwood. Well, let's start with holy basil. Holy basil is actually not a cooling herb at all. In fact, it's a warming herb. It has a smell similar to clove. Holy basil is also called tulsi. Smell similar to clove, and it's actually used in Indian culture as the way we use ginger. The way ginger is used in China and Japan. Well, not exactly the way they're used, but it's used for colds. So it's used for colds because it warms your body. But holy basil, as you can tell from the word holy, it's considered, let me just put it this way. It's a sacred plant in the Hindu religion, and it's considered the physical embodiment in plant form of the goddess Lakshmi. And so holy basil is considered extremely sattvic. Sattvic is mentally balancing. And so it's in this formula because it has a calming, cooling effect on the mind, even though it's mildly warming to the body. That seems paradoxical, but Asia is full of paradox. And the point is that it's combined with otherwise cooling herbs, such as cardamom. Now, cardamom is an interesting one because it's a cooling herb that's also stimulates the digestive fire. And that's an interesting point, too. You can have cooling herbs like peppermint and cardamom that are cooling but stimulate the digestive fire in the same way that warming herbs like pepper and ginger stimulate the digestive fire. So cardamom. So I will often add cardamom to my Jamaicha, my Mexican hibiscus beverage. I'll often put a little bit of cardamom and or saffron in there. Okay, so cardamom, cinnamon. Cinnamon, everybody knows that cinnamon's a warming herb. But because it's sweet tasting herbs pacify pitta. Sweet tasting herbs are cooling not because they have a cooling temperature the way cucumber does, but because the sweet flavor relaxes the pitta dosha, the Pitta dosha. The sweet flavor has this is a little theoretical, but the sweet flavor is comprised of water and earth in Ayurvedic medical theory. So sweet herbs are cooling because just imagine that a sweet herb has a lot of water in it. So cinnamon, and this is paradoxical because obviously cinnamon is warming when you use more of it, but it's also a function of the fact that there's a little bit of it in here. And once again, it's balanced by the otherwise cooling herbs, which are cardamom and sandalwood. And sandalwood is extremely cooling. Sandalwood is one of the most cooling herbs. It's used in India. It's used in India in topical form as a powder on prickly heat, on hot type skin rashes. It's used in facial masks for acne where the people's skin feels hot. So sandalwood is very cooling. And actually you can get sandalwood online just make sure of the supplier, in like little chipped pieces of wood form. I'd be really careful getting sandalwood powder because if you can't see what was ground in there, you don't know what was ground there. Licorice is another herb that is cooling, and it's in cooling mostly because it's sweet and it's very harmonizing. So that's an Ayurvedic, an example of one Ayurvedic summer cooling tea. And you can use any of those ingredients. So for example, the licorice root is found in the sarsaparilla. You could certainly now licorice root, when you boil it, it makes things sweet. So you could certainly put licorice root in with the Jamaicha if you wanted to use that as your sweetener. So now let's go back to the burdock root. The burdock root, because it's a root and because it's a vegetable, you actually boil it. Here's my burdock root. I've already boiled it. You boil it for quite a while. I'm going to boil this longer. I've just boiled this for about 10 minutes, and you can see the color already coming there from the burdock root. So, and you can see the burdock root piece is getting soft, but you can't overcook the burdock root really. So I'm going to add a significantly more amount of water, and I'm going to boil it for another 10 to 15 minutes on a low boil. This is my Pita Tea. That Pita Tea. This is my Pita Tea, and let's see if I can show you the color. So I have added some strands of saffron to this Pita Tea. Saffron is a very good nervous system herb. I have some neurological pain from a nerve injury in my foot. So I've added some saffron to this, but it's also really good. I'm feeling a little stressed out lately. It's also a really good nervous system calming. It's very gentle. It's very subtle. And it's a tonic. It's a rasina. It's a very gentle tonic herb that's good for people with any kind of weakness involving the nervous system. So that could be from being an anxious type person, a nervous type person, a person that doesn't handle stress well. I'll be honest, I don't handle stress well. So I love saffron. So it can be used for all of that kind of personality type, but also it's also can be used like if you're just working extremely hard and you're depleting your reserves. Saffron is a nice herb. You'll find it in a lot of Indian sweets. It's very fragrant and it gives a beautiful color to things. It's delicious. Okay, so that's the Pita Tea with saffron. That was the burdock root tea. I hesitate to call the burdock root extraction a tea because I so much think of it as a soup. In Chinese medicine, the word for the herbs that you cook medicinally, tang, actually is the same word for soup. But I'll just actually show you something. Let me open the refrigerator and grab this. Yesterday I made this, and so but I wanted more burdock, so I grabbed the wrong pot. Yesterday I cooked burdock root with, this is another favorite summer thing of mine, spring to summer, and I've written about this on my blog, on my website, bodymindwellnesscenter.com. So this is burdock root, celery, carrot, and parsley. So this is a soup, but I didn't add anything else. There's no salt. There's no flavorings. I just drink this as a beverage in the summer when it is hot out, and also I'm drinking it because I had a little bit of eczema flare up with the hot weather. I'm prone to skin issues myself, which is partially why I specialize in dermatology. You'll find, and so this is my beverage right here. Normally I'll pour it through a strainer, and it's a beautiful beverage. Celery is very cleansing, parsley is very cleansing and rich in nutrients. I'm going to drink some right now. Oh, that's really good. I love the flavor of celery, and the way celery, carrot, parsley, and burdock mix really well. I will often make the same combination. Actually, when I made that, I also juiced celery, parsley, and carrot without the burdock. Okay, so burdock root, you can use it combine it with vegetables and boil it and make a cooling summer vegetable juice drink. We Americans growing up with the kind of diet we do, the standard American diet, we don't learn those kind of things. But my grandmother in the summer always drank vegetable juice, and there were some other things, some kind of soups that she would make in the summer, like it's called chav, which is made with sorrel leaf, and they would have that cold. It's a sorrel leaf soup. I mean, we make all these creamy vegetable soups in the summer, but they're loaded with heavy cream. You don't have to do that. So this is a clear broth that's just fabulous. I'm going to have a little more. Oh, that's great. I wouldn't normally drink it so cold right out of the fridge, but I just grabbed it. So what I'll actually normally do is dilute that. You see how much is in the cup? I'll fill it up with room temperature water, so it's cool but not ice cold. And then where was I? So burdock root. So that's the burdock root. And then finally so I showed you the burdock root. And then finally, and then the sarsaparilla, which is also a root. I don't boil it. I actually simmer it for about 10 minutes on a low heat. Just simmer it for about 10 minutes. I find that if you overcook the sarsaparilla, it kills the aromatics, and then it becomes bitter. So the sarsaparilla, you mix it with water, bring it to a low boil, and then just simmer it for 10 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes. And then finally the Jamaicha. Where has my Jamaicha gone? That's the sarsaparilla. Did I show you? But let me just show you the sarsaparilla. I don't know if you can see it. There we go. Okay, so that's the sarsaparilla. So I'm going to pour that. I'm going to actually simmer it maybe another 5 minutes. I think I just simmered it for a few minutes. And then you'll pour that through a strainer and then add your other ingredients. And then here's my Jamaicha. So the Jamaicha, you do not boil it. You just, it's a flour. So you just steep it the same way you would steep any other, like black tea or green tea. So boil the water and add it, and then just let it steep. And that's the Jamaicha with corn. And now for the Coup De Gras, let me see, maybe I'll pour it into a bowl. I want you to be able to see the color. I'm not going to strain it, I'm just going to pour some out for you. See if I can do this without making a total mess. There we go. So it's kind of the color, depending on how strong you make it, it's kind of the color. I don't know if any of you had Hawaiian punch. There used to be a drink when I was a kid that we all loved. It was a fruit drink called Hawaiian punch. I don't know what gave it its red color, probably artificial coloring. But anyway, it's this lovely red color. Of course, I strain it so you wouldn't have those pieces of corn. And my camera's making it look more brown, but it's actually really a lovely red color. Okay, that's it. Summer cooling drinks. Basic principle to sum up: cool your body naturally with the cooling qualities intrinsic to the herbs themselves. You can have the drinks out of the fridge, but